MISTFALL, Shadows in the Mist. Scene 1, the march north. They called it MISTFALL for a reason. We'd barely crossed the northern gates of Highguard when the world vanished into grey. Those stone walls had kept the dreaming empire safe from the horrors of the north for over 1,000 years. There is as much blood as stone in those walls. Fog like wet gauze clung to every tree, every stone, every shadow. Even the wind had gone quiet, like it didn't dare speak in this place. In places like this, silence is life. And sound, screams. I tightened the strap on my shoulder plate and tried to keep my breathing steady. My armor still smelled of forge soot. The others, veterans with blood-stained cloaks and faces carved from war, didn't seem to notice the cold or the silence. But I felt both like a heavy weight. They said I was ready. But this land and its mist doesn't care what they say. Neither do the monsters. I've never seen a monster before. Many of the others have, and that should reassure me. But it does not. Not one damn bit. 50 of us marched in rows of 6 and 7. Iron fangs, heavy infantry, my unit. 12 Red Rain archers, hushed and deadly, each step precise. 3 black ravens, cloaked in ashen cloth and steel, already vanished into the mist like ghosts. 3 mages, draped in black robes, stitched with sigils that crawled when you blinked. Then there was the sergeant, stone-eyed and silent, and the officer, his silver badge glinting through the fog like a beacon. I was the youngest by a decade, 17, barely a shadow in the ranks. They gave me a spear, longsword, dented tower shield, and told me to follow the line. So I did, like a little good soldier, like a dead man waiting for his turn. We passed the old stone markers by dusk, weathered slabs warning travellers not to go farther. The officer stopped for a moment at the last one. A crow sat perched on the stone. It didn't caw, just watched us with red eyes. "You see that?" someone muttered. "An omen," said another. "Could be worse," the sergeant replied. "Could be too." That was the only joke I heard all day. Our boots thudded on frost-hardened ground. The valley of MISTFALL yawned before us, miles of lowland swamped in endless mist, forests like black teeth on either side. Somewhere in that murk, a caravan had vanished. A very important somebody had been on it. When it didn't show at Highguard a week ago, they came to us. The grim shadows, mercenaries for hire, no bodies, no survivors, no signs of what took them. Our orders were simple: find it, return. The ravens vanished ahead to scout. The Red Rain moved wide to the flanks. The mages murmured warding glyphs under their breath. I stayed in the center, shoulder to shoulder with iron-clad killers whose names I didn't even know yet. I only knew one, Sergeant Braille. He walked just ahead of me, a slab of meat and steel with a helm scarred by 12 campaigns. He'd been in the Bloodhunters since before I was born. They said he once cut down a witch queen by himself and then burned her bones while her cult screamed from the treetops. They said he was at the Battle of the Crystal Spire in Arquest against the Silver Veils, that he had fought near the Red Hand himself, Starfaller. But then again, everyone knows we mercs are all full of shit. But there is something in his eyes. Maybe. He hadn't spoken to me directly once, not until the sun dipped red behind the fog. That's when he slowed, turned and grunted. "You scared?" I nodded before I could stop myself. He grunted again. "Good, that means you'll live." Then he kept walking. We made camp in a half-buried glade surrounded by dead trees. The mist didn't clear, it never did. Fires hissed and spat like they hated the air. No singing, no laughter, just sharpening blades and checking armor. I sat beside my pack, gripping my spear too tightly. Across from me, one of the mages drew a symbol in the dirt that hissed green and vanished. One of the Red Rain archers cleaned blood off his arrowheads with a cloth that looked too stained to be fresh. The sergeant passed by, looked down at me. "Tomorrow we hit the deep fog," he said. I nodded. He crouched, his voice low. "When the time comes, son, you stand and fight. Don't run, 'cause they can smell fear." "Who?" He stood. "The things that aren't supposed to live in fog, but do." Then he walked into the dark. Scene 2, the Ender's ambush. By midday, the world was bone white. I could see more than 20 feet in front of me. We moved single file now, an old trick to hid our numbers. The mist thickened like curdled milk, twisting between the trees, curling into mouths and hands, dragging sound into silence. Even the birds had stopped. The crows didn't return. The archers had eyes like knives. I couldn't see more than 10 feet in any direction. "Hold formation," Braille said. I kept my shield up, spear low. My breath steamed from my helm like smoke from a dying fire. We passed a rotted wagon, half sunk in the mud. No bodies. No horses, just drag marks, blood on the spokes, red streaks vanishing into the brush. The officer said nothing, just raised a hand, and we pressed on. That's when I heard it. A crack, then a wet crunch. Someone behind me screamed. I turned. Something huge and fast tore one of the iron fangs from the line, lifted him screaming into the mist. Blood sprayed in long ribbons. A second shape charged from the trees, all antlers, claws, and bone-wrapped muscle. Contact! Contact! The woods exploded. They came in waves, the enders, half human, half horror. Tall as ogres, roped with muscle, covered in crude furs and bone charms. Blood-stained runes showed on the foreheads, arms and chests. Eyes like dying stars, jaws wide and filled with sharp human teeth. Their weapons were rusted cleavers, chains, jagged iron bars wrapped in skin. With all the chaos, blood and screaming, you might wonder why we call them enders. It's because many believe they will one day end the world. There is even a prophecy or two about it. That's what they say. I saw one leap through the fog and crush an archer's chest with a stone maul. Another tackled a mage and bit straight through her throat before getting set on fire by the second. I watched myself standing there in the middle of this battle, just standing there with a stupid look on my face. My heart felt like a hammer. My hands were shaking. I just stood there. Then I saw the sergeant. Braille didn't flinch, didn't roar, just stepped forward and crushed a Ender's skull with one blow from his hammer. He moved like the war was part of his blood. 1 kill, 2 kills, 3. I felt ashamed. I felt anger. I felt rage. I screamed and charged, shield up, spear pointed high. One of the monsters lunged at me, mouth open, and I slammed the edge of my shield into its face. Teeth flew. Blood hit my helm. I brought the spear up, punching through its collarbone. Once, twice. Bone cracked, skin split. It still tried to bite me. I kicked it off and thrust again. The tip of the spear went into its eye. This time it stayed down. We fought for what felt like hours. It was minutes. The fog turned red. The ground became a grave of twitching limbs and steaming guts. A black raven dropped from a tree and slit the throat of an ender mid-charge. Another tossed black powder into the mist. It exploded in a flash of shadow and light, disorienting them. A horn blew. Ours. Fall back. Regroup. We did, and the forest went still again. We counted heads. We lost 7 men. We got lucky. Somehow. We'd survived it with minimum losses. But why? There were only a few of those things. There should have been a lot more. I should just be happy to be alive. But I'm not. I don't know how I know, but something is very wrong. The officer didn't smile. Neither did the sergeant. "Why didn't they run?" one of the archers asked. The raven closest to him just said, "They weren't supposed to." What? They were testing us. That night, I sat with my back against a tree, staring into a fire that didn't chase off the cold or my memories. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. My spearhead wouldn't come clean. I could still feel the ender's breath on my face, still hear the sound of my spear thrusting into something that should have been dead already. I wasn't sure if I was proud, or sick, or both. I went to the woodline as if I had to piss, and puked my guts out. I just knew something worse was coming. The red-eye crows hadn't returned. Scene 3, the vanished caravan. My sister lies in her bed next to mine. She's looking at me with that same silly smile she always wore before sneaking off to the bakery to steal sweets. Her hair's a mess. She's humming something. I tell her I'm glad to be home, that I missed everyone, missed her. She tilts her head and says softly, "Amen, you're dreaming." "Wake up," I gasp and sit up, shivering. The cold morning air cuts through my armor like wire. I don't even remember lying down. However long I was asleep, it wasn't enough, not by a long shot. God, I'm tired. Sis, I hadn't thought of her once since joining the Grim Shadows, not during training, Not on the march, not even after last night's slaughter. So why now? Around me the others rise without speaking, armor creaking, boots scraping frost, blades being strapped in silence. I move like a corpse learning to stand. My legs ache, my hands won't stop trembling. Another day in Mistfall, another chance to die. I try to steel myself, for whatever comes, for whoever doesn't come back, maybe me. The mist didn't lift with the sun, it thickened. We moved out at dawn, weapons drawn, nerves frayed thin as bowstrings. The ravens returned just after first light with news. They'd found the trail. Wagon tracks, blood, scattered belongings. No bodies. We moved fast, 2 columns. Red rain archers on the flanks, iron fangs in the center, mages watching the air like hawks that saw ghosts instead of prey. The trail took us along a hollow ridge, choked with dying trees. I saw scraps of torn cloth in the branches, wagon wheels sunk deep into the mud, shattered crates, broken wine bottles, jewelry glinting beneath frost. And then, nothing. No corpses, no bones, no signs of a fight. Just silence, as if the land had swallowed 25 souls without a sound. Even the crows were gone. I heard one of the archers whisper, "This mist eats the dead." No one corrected him. We circled what was left of the caravan. 3 wagons, ripped apart like toys. A child's doll lay in the grass, its face smeared red. Someone kicked it aside. "Where are the bodies?" I asked aloud. The sergeant didn't answer, but the officer turned. "Scouts," he said, "fan out, 10 minutes." The ravens and 2 archers vanished into the fog. I knelt beside a wagon, found deep gouges in the wood, burn marks too. Like fire had licked through, but the frames weren't burned through. One of the mage scribes inspected the bloodstains. With a stone that glowed green, muttered something I didn't catch, and walked away fast. That's when I noticed the ground. No birds, no bugs. Even the flies were gone. 10 minutes passed, then 20. And then they came back. The lead raven, a pale man with a scar across both eyelids, whispered to the officer, then turned and gestured. We followed. Into the woods. At this point, you might be wondering what a caravan would be doing out here so far from Highguard or the Empire. Well, since you are a stranger to our lands, I will tell you. The Dwarven Mountain holds are north of this wasteland. There is, of course, Thrones Road that links all the major cities of the Empire together and goes north to the Dwarven kingdoms and other areas. But some like to take what they think is a shortcut. They think their titles and wealth will protect them from places like this savage land. I can't say why someone would be stupid enough to try Mistfall, but they did. And there you have it. The trees thickened fast, great black oaks and bone-pale birches strangled by vines. The fog here curled low like it was afraid of the branches above. Everything smelled wet and wrong. The mist clung to our skin like breath from a dying animal. We saw the first one strung between 2 trees, a skin, human skin, no bones, no muscle, just the outer shell hanging like a tattered robe. I froze, couldn't breathe. Then another and another, all flayed clean, stretched between branches, some with eyes still intact, rolled up in terror. Dozens of them twitching slightly in the windless air. "Gods," one of the Red Rain muttered. One of the mages turned and threw up into the brush. Sergeant Braille didn't flinch. He just grunted and said, "Warning markers." "Warning for what?" I asked. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. We pushed forward. We had to. We were grim shadows. That meant we kept going. Even when we wanted to run. Even when our stomachs turned and our minds screamed and everything sane said turn back. We walked under the hanging skins, through them. They brushed against our helms, our shoulders. One got caught on my spear tip. I pulled away like it burned me. By dusk, we found the clearing, a ring of standing stones covered in carvings I couldn't read, symbols that twisted when you stared too long. And in the center, nothing. Just dirt and silence. We made camp without a fire. The officer set watches. 2 men vanished trying to piss before nightfall. One came back with his mouth sewn shut. We cut the threads. He screamed until he passed out. His eyes were all pupil. Then the creatures came. From the trees, from the dirt, from nowhere. Scene 4. The Night That Screamed. The mist didn't sleep. It curled and coiled through our camp like it was watching. Alive, hungry, waiting. I couldn't see the trees anymore. Just grey. Endless grey, pressing in like cold breath from some beast too big to understand. We didn't speak. No fire, no songs. Just armor creaking and whispered prayers that didn't help. We all seemed to know something was coming. I sat with my shield in my lap, fingers raw from the cold. My longsword was across my knees. My spear leaned against a stone behind me. I stared at the ground until I realized it was moving. Or maybe my eyes were lying to me again. I remembered what the sergeant said when we first left Highguard. Out here, trust your training, not your eyes. The mist lies a lot louder than men. He was right. I blinked once and saw faces in the fog. I blinked again and they were gone. A quiet cough to my left, a shifting of armor to my right. One of the mages muttered a ward under his breath, fingers trembling around a glowing charm stone. Then the screaming started, not from one direction, but all of them. From the trees, from the stones, from the earth itself. The fog exploded. Shapes burst from the mist like it had given birth to monsters, slashing, snarling, tearing through the first row of sentries before anyone shouted alarm. Something grabbed a Red Rain archer by the throat and ripped, his head thrown like a rock into the dark. A mage went down, screaming as black claws tore open his spine. "Shields!" Braille roared. I snapped to my feet. 3 creatures lunged from the right, grey skin stretched over bones like wet paper, limbs too long, eyes lidless and glowing. I raised my tower shield just in time to catch the first. It shrieked like metal against bone and slammed into me. I stumbled back, but held. The second circled. The third leapt, only to take a throwing knife through its eye from one of the black ravens. It convulsed and collapsed, twitching. A Red Rain arrow whistled through the fog, finding a throat. Sparks of arcane fire lit the clearing. The mist flashed red, then green, then black. Voices shouted, then screamed, then went silent. Something hit me from behind. I turned and drove my longsword straight through its ribs, twisting with all my strength. The thing gurgled and fell. I kicked it off and brought my shield up again. Around me the clearing had become a maelstrom of shadows and blood. My squad held tight, shields forward, spears out, a living wall of iron teeth. "Iron fangs, hold the line," someone shouted. We did. We pushed back, inch by inch. The ravens moved like ghosts, darting between the stones, cutting deep with curved blades. Red Rain fired blindly into the mist, their arrows blessed with flame and salt. Mages conjured barriers and fire walls, stalling the surge just long enough for us to regroup. I felt something hot splash my face. Blood, not mine. You'd be surprised how much blood gets in your mouth and eyes when you kill up close. A man to my left, Gorin, I think, took a slash to the jaw. He went down without a word. A creature leapt at me again. I caught it on my spear this time, impaling it through the gut. It screamed, bit at the shaft, then went still. I tore it free. They didn't stop coming. 5 more, 7, another mage screamed, and then silence. We formed a ring, shoulders to shoulders, cut, thrust, shield, block, cut, repeat, over and over, until my arms shook, until I tasted copper, until I couldn't tell the mist from the blood in my eyes. But eventually they stopped, not all at once, just less of them. Then none, only the sound of shallow breathing, the wet slap of a falling corpse, and the distant moan of something retreating into the trees. And silence. I didn't realize I was crying until the sergeant touched my shoulder and said, "You held." We lost 6 men, 1 mage, dozens wounded. We didn't sleep, not a single one of us. Just stared at the dark and waited for the next scream. "What are these things?" I asked, looking down at this half-man, beast, and tree. The sergeant looked down at it and spit. "More enders, they come in different types. Some type of corruption that taints these people, maybe in the water. That's why we don't drink or eat anything here." I thought of my sister again that night. My hands had stopped shaking at some point. My senses were sharper than ever. My breathing calm, and for the first time since joining the grim shadows, I didn't want to go home. Scene 5. The Descent. We found the temple at dusk, a black stone ruin curled in moss and bones, half swallowed by the hillside. 2 statues flanked the entrance, demons with broken horns and wide maws, frozen in the act of devouring the world. Their eyes strange like they had a hood, with eyes all around their head. There was a clear line between the hood and the lower part of the faces. It spooked the hell out of me. No one spoke. The officer raised one hand, we lit torches and entered. The tunnel sloped downward at a cruel angle. The air turned sour, wet with rot and iron. Stone walls glistened with moisture at first, then something else. Veins, not stone but something living threaded beneath the surface, flesh-like, pale and pulsing. The deeper we went, the more it felt like walking into a wound. It got colder. After the first hour, I couldn't feel my fingers. After the second, the whispers started, faint, like a memory of a voice I never knew. Some turned their heads to listen, some clenched their jaws and walked faster. By the end of the 3rd hour, 5 of the red rain snapped. They screamed, dropped their bows, clawed at their own helms. One of them, Kale, I think, knocked me to the ground as he ran, his face twisted with terror. "We have to go. We have to go. It's in us." They bolted, not back up toward the light, but down, deeper. The sergeant shouted for them to stop. A few tried. One drew steel, only to be knocked aside by the madness in their comrades' eyes. I struggled to my feet as their screams echoed off the stone, then faded, then vanished. The officer said nothing. The sergeant didn't look back. We moved on. A half-hour later, the tunnel split. 3 paths, each yawning wide like open mouths. We stopped. No one volunteered a word. The sergeant finally spoke. "We making camp, sir?" The officer just stared at him, slow nod, almost confused, like he had forgotten what the word camp meant. We set up without fire, 2 guards at each path. The rest of us took shifts, sleeping in small groups, our backs to the wall. I tried to close my eyes, dreamed of being devoured. By the stone, by the mist, by the thing inside the walls. I woke with blood in my mouth, don't remember biting my lip, don't remember falling asleep. Around me no one met each other's eyes. Seems we all dreamed the same thing. Before we moved out again, I looked at the survivors. We had lost 7 the first night, 6 more at the ruined camp, now 5 gone to madness. Only 32 of us left, and every step we took, MISTFALL took someone back. I drifted closer to the sergeant. His silence was steadying. Or the mage. He still had that charm stone gripped like a drowning man holding driftwood. If anyone makes it out of this, it'll be one of them. And I plan to be standing next to whoever that is. Scene 6, the eyes above. The sergeant chose the middle path. He said nothing at first, just stared into the dark for a long moment before nodding once and setting off. The officer followed in silence, still saying little, but I caught the sergeant glancing at me out of the corner of his eye. Watching me. Measuring something he wasn't ready to say. We walked downward for another 3 hours. No one spoke. The only sound was the drag of boots against stone and the steady rasp of breath in cold air. The walls here had changed again. Less flesh, more bone. Ribs of fossilized matter curved across the corridor, forming a natural arch like we were walking down the gullet of some titanic beast. Every now and then I swore I saw them move. Eventually we reached a chamber. It opened like a wound in the earth, a vast ruined temple lost in the bowels of the world. Its doors were sealed with iron chains, locked from the outside. Someone had closed this place off long ago, but not long enough. The metal was fresh rusted, the dust disturbed. Someone or something had been here recently. Inside, the room was massive, too massive. The ceiling vanished into shadows above our torches. I couldn't tell where it ended. The walls were carved with old glyphs, smeared in dried blood, and symbols I didn't recognize. A deep pit sat in the center of the room, and in that pit were bodies, dozens of them. I counted 25, all dead maybe a week. Some nobility, some not. All showed the same wound, chests caved in, hearts ripped out, like something had torn through bone with hands or claws or worse. A black stone altar stood behind the pit, stained, slick with ancient gore. I could feel it humming in my bones. The mage approached it carefully, torch raised. He ran his hand a few inches above the stone and closed his eyes. When he opened them, they glowed faint blue. His voice was cold. A sacrifice was made here. A great one. The portal residue is strong, recent, within days. He paused. I believe a gate was opened to the hells or to the void realms. Something powerful came through. The officer stepped forward, calm as ever. His voice cut the silence for the first time that day. Sergeant, he said, have one of the men retrieve the items from the noble in purple. Scroll and amulet should be on him. He didn't ask. He ordered, and we obeyed. The sergeant called Franco forward, a lanky, quiet man from the Red Rain. Franco gave a shaky nod, sheathed his blade, and slowly climbed into the pit. We all watched, breath held, hands on hilts, eyes fixed on the noble's corpse and the horror we expected to leap from it. But nothing did. Franco crouched beside the noble's body, hands shaking as he rummaged through the blood-stained folds of a fine, ruined robe. We were so focused on Franco that we didn't hear it. But we felt it. The hair on the back of my neck rose all at once. My stomach clenched, my vision blurred. Something is wrong here. Not just the dead, not just the altar. We are not alone. There was a sound, so soft it almost wasn't there. A slithering, like wet silk, dragging over skin. It echoed from the walls, from beneath us, from above. I whispered, Sergeant, we need to move. We've got what we came for. He didn't answer, but I saw the twitch in his jaw. He felt it too, so did the mage. And the black ravens. They were tense, scanning the dark with twitching blades. Franco climbed from the pit, scroll in one hand, amulet in the other. Then one of the ravens looked up. What in the hells? I followed his gaze, and saw madness. The ceiling wasn't a ceiling. It was a veil of eyes, thousands of them, big, bulging, unblinking. They stared down at us from the endless dark, some human, some beast, some shaped like nothing I'd ever seen. And worse, they moved, but didn't. They shimmered, rippled, blinked out of sync, like the sky had become a living, breathing thing. The sergeant roared, "Run!" He grabbed the officer by the collar just as he stood frozen, mouth agape, whispering, "By the gods!" And then everything erupted. Scene 7, The Children of the Ceiling. We should have run. We should have fled the moment we saw those eyes, but instead, we watched, in frozen awe, in horror, in the kind of dread that seeps into your marrow and tells you the world has ended, and you just haven't accepted it yet. From the thing above, from the ceiling, small black shapes began to drift downward, slowly at first, floating like ash, 10 of them, maybe more. Each one shaped like a hood, a black shroud that opened wide at the bottom, narrowing at the top. But it was the band of eyes that made my breath catch. Huge, glistening orbs set in a ring around the center of each hood, staring in all directions as they descended. Then they moved. Faster than thought, they struck like arrows. In an instant, they latched onto heads, dropping with perfect surgical speed. I saw 3 black ravens vanish beneath them, then 6 iron fangs, then the officer. They didn't even scream. Not at first. Most of us had stopped running. We just stood there, paralyzed, as the hoods anchored onto their skulls. That was the worst part, watching, knowing we should move, unable to look away. Then the screaming began. One of the black ravens convulsed violently. His mouth stretched wide beneath the edge of the thing, now welded to his face. A thick, glue-like liquid, or maybe acid, began to bubble from the seal where the hood fused with his flesh. It hissed and steamed, eating into skin. I heard a sickening pop as something broke beneath it. Then another scream, then another. They howled as they drew their weapons. And charged us, gods. They charged us. The sergeant didn't hesitate. He spun toward the officer, still staggering under one of the hoods, and drove his blade straight into the man's chest. Then, in the same breath, he kicked the body away and tore the satchel from his shoulder, the one Franco had risked his life for. A raven screamed and lunged toward me. I barely raised my blade in time, but it wouldn't have mattered. He was faster. His sword slashed across my face, cheek to ear. Pain exploded in my skull, and I fell backward. I saw the raven's blade rise for a killing blow. Then the sergeant's arm locked around my collar and yanked me clear just in time. If not for him, my head would have been on the floor. We fought, we had no choice. 10 of those things. 10 of ours turned into monsters. And they didn't fight like mindless beasts. They fought with precision, training, all the skill they'd had in life, now used to kill us. I remember the mage's voice rising above it all, a chant, old and furious. Fire swirled from his hands and burst upward in a single roaring arc. The thing on the ceiling caught. It went up like oil-soaked rags, burning in perfect silence. Not a sound, not a death cry, just heat, flame, light, and a smell I'll never forget, burnt eyes and rot. Still, the possessed kept coming. We stabbed, we slashed, we screamed, but they didn't fall. I drove my blade clean through a raven's chest. He just kept walking. "They're not dying," someone shouted. "They won't fall." Then the mage called out again, this time with clarity. "The hoods! Stab the hoods!" We turned our blades upward. The next iron fang that went down, he was gored by a possessed raven, but I saw his partner stab the hood itself. The thing shrieked and popped like a rotten egg. The man under it collapsed like a puppet with its strings cut. That was the answer. We went for the heads. One by one, the monsters fell. But so did we. When it was over, there were only 5 of us left, just 5. 2 iron fangs, the sergeant, the mage, and me. We stood among the bodies of friends and killers both, panting, slick with blood that wasn't entirely ours. I looked at the corpses, those who had turned, their mouths still open, their faces still frozen in agony. The black ravens had killed so many of us. I dropped to one knee and retched. The sergeant stood over me, silent. The mage wiped blood from his eyes and muttered, "No wonder the doors were locked from the outside." I nodded. This place didn't want to keep anything out, it was meant to keep something in. We locked the door back and ran. Scene 8, the return. We ran without stopping, not once. Through that cursed stone corridor, past the 3 pathways, past the flesh like walls. We didn't speak, we didn't breathe unless we had to. The air still stank of burned flesh and that thing's last breath. After what felt like hours, the tunnel spit us back out into the open, and for the first time in my life, I was happy to see the mist. Cold, wet, familiar. If anything was stupid enough to attack us now, gods help them. We made it back to Highguard by dusk the next day, half limping, half starving, covered in blood and ash and stink. I remember the guards parting without a word when they saw our faces. We didn't look like soldiers. We looked like survivors of a war no one saw. The client was waiting in a stone chamber lit with oil lanterns and smug silence. A fat noble draped in purple silk and too many rings. The kind of man who eats while others die for his errands. The mage handed him the scroll. The sergeant handed him the amulet. The noble took it with shaking hands, looked down at the symbol, then whispered, more to himself than to us, "Looks like I'm the new lord, brother. Hope you rot in hell." He smiled. "Job well done, gentlemen. Payment has already been arranged." I didn't move, just stared, and felt something crawl up my spine. A cold rage, not loud, not sharp, just steady, a silent, seething truth burning behind my eyes. "Do you know how many good men died for this, you piece of worthless dog shit?" I thought about killing him. Right then, no ceremony, no warning. But in the end, I just bowed like the others. "Thank you, my lord," I heard myself say. We all did, and then we left. Later that night, we sat in a tavern none of us remembered the name of. We drank. Hard. The kind of drinking that silences dreams. We didn't toast the fallen, we didn't speak their names. We drank so we wouldn't have to. The sergeant slid a fresh mug toward me, leaned in with that grim look of his. "You did good, Ahmen. I'll be recommending you for corporal. You still miss home?" I didn't answer. He nodded anyway. "They want us in Archest, training rotation, real assignments, so I'll ask again." He raised his drink. "You still want to be a grim shadow?" I looked at him, at the blood on our boots, at the empty chairs that would never be filled again. And I laughed. "Hells, Sergeant. Why would I want to be anything else? For more grimdark tales like this, read Starfaller, Shadowborn, and the upcoming novel Archest in Shadows at Amazon and Barnes and Nobles.